Hello, I'm recording a video again. Okay, I've forgotten how to talk again. Yeah, I've been still very, very busy. I might have to take like a couple of days off. I don't usually have like weekends or anything, because there's no reason to when you work for yourself, and you're doing something that you like mainly enjoy. But I am going a little bit crazy. I've been going so so long without any kind of break. But yes, I've been getting used to VS Code for the last few days. I guess I could talk about my experiences with. So I switched to VS Code because I'm trying to keep up to date with like the world of AI assistants and all this stuff. So I think this is the one that people keep going on about, Cursor, and it is really good. Like, well, there's two parts to Cursor. There is the part which is basically exactly what GitHub Copilot was doing, but much better, which is when you're like navigating around a file and typing code, it will occasionally pop up suggestions and it will try to guess what you're doing and predict what code you're about to type, and it will like jump around in the file in a much more effective way than Copilot ever did, and the suggestions are a lot better, and you just like press tab to fill things in, and it really speeds things up a lot. That is really good. So the other part of it is this thing where you can talk to the AI agent and you can have conversations with it and try to tell it to do things for you. And it's actually quite impressive the way they've engineered it, in that it knows that it's inside VS Code and it understands how to create files and things like that. And it will create changes where it like modifies multiple files, and then it will give you an interface to like review the changes on each file and all that stuff. All of that stuff's quite impressive. The only problem with it is that it's terrible. It's like really dumb because it's an LLM, and like the suggestions that it can, like the things that it can do for a C++ developer are just not useful. The things that it's able to do, like I mean, after playing around with it and trying to get it to do various things, I've never felt more unthreatened by this idea of AI taking my job as a programmer, because it's so shit. With other languages, maybe it's effective at what it's supposed to do, but I guess C++ is a good C++ as a language is probably a good test, or a good way to expose what is actually happening in that. It's like what people say all the time, is that it's just predicting the next word in a sequence of words. That's literally all it's doing. It doesn't know how to reason about anything. It's not thinking, even if it seems like it is thinking sometimes. Sometimes it's a little bit spooky in the way that it seems to like it understands things, and it seems to suggest things. It seems to read your mind sometimes. But playing around with the chat functionality, like even things that I feel like it should be able to do, like as a C++ developer, it's kind of annoying that there's all this bullshit that you have to know, which is nothing to do with like the fun part of programming and like problem solving as a C++ developer. Like, it annoys me that I have to know all this bullshit about CMake and build systems and how to configure my compiler, how to configure my debugger. And moving over to VS Code, you have to deal with all of these. You have to like manually set up your debugger and set up your environment and things, and you have like, even after using it for a few days, I still don't understand the difference between like launch.json and tasks.json and the CMake presets and all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, I have this big like CMake project with a bunch of different targets, and one of them is like unit tests for this library. this library, I've just like manually created a thing here now. I want to be able to like run the unit tests for this library and debug it. And I could tell by like, I can launch that target. I could do like, there's some, I can't remember what the command is now, but you can like launch a target that has been generated from the CMake project. And it would like run the target, but it would run it without debugging it. So the VS Code obviously knows where that executable is in order to run it. But then I couldn't figure out how to make it debug. So I was like, so there's like, hold on, where is it? Launch.json. So I've just manually created this thing for running this unit test. And you have to like manually specify the complete path to the executable, like the final executable that's being generated. But VS Code obviously knows where this executable is, because even without this, there's a way to like run a target that's being generated with CMake. So I was like, okay, maybe I can get the chat to help me like write this, and then maybe like write a generic thing so that I can like launch any target without having to manually edit this. And that's the kind of thing that it should be able to help me with, but it goes round in circles forever and ever, just like suggesting the wrong thing and then the wrong thing and the wrong thing. And it does it with that jovial, like very confident verbiage that it uses for everything. It's like, oh, I see what the problem is now. Okay, let's try this. Okay, let's create this file and let's do this. And then, oh, I see. And it's like, no, mate, that's wrong. That's wrong. Everything you're suggesting is wrong. None of this shit works. So I don't know, hopefully maybe it'll get better at that kind of thing in the future, but I sort of have my doubts. Anyway, that was a big rant about... So ignoring the chat functionality, which I've tried to use it for various different things. When it comes to like using it for like actually figuring things... Oh yeah, the other thing you can do is if you get a compiler error, you can like right click on the error and say fix with AI. It's never been able to, like, if it's a really obvious error where you could just like look at the code and see what the problem is, then there's no reason to use it, because you can just like, if you can see that what the problem is, you can just fix it yourself. So there's no reason to use it in that case. If it's one of these complicated errors that you always encounter as a C++ developer, it's just part of writing C++ is occasionally you'll get a very long and strange error message, usually if you're doing something with templates or whatever, and you're just like staring at the error message going, what does that even mean? And sometimes it takes like 10-15 minutes to figure it out. So that is the kind of thing that ideally you should be able to like right click and say fix with AI, and it would just figure out what's going on for you. It can't do it. It's no better than a human at figuring out those horrible C++ error messages. I tried it out a few different times now. It cannot do it. It's useless. So I'm just going to ignore the chat thing. Like maybe I was thinking maybe I could do it just to like quickly create files, because sometimes when I create a new class or something, typically what I would do is I have this source directory. If I create a new class like this one, for example, you want to create the header and the CPP. And so, I mean, that can take sometimes upwards of 10 seconds. Like you have to open that, and then you like go like right click, new, create the header file, create the CPP file, give them both the same name, and then I have to like open sources.cmake and add the name to this list. Maybe it would be able to do that. I don't know. Let's give it a test. Let's try it. Create a new header source pair in source with the name test, and add the name to sources.cmake. I haven't tried this before. Let's see if it actually manages to do it. It's completely guessing at the content, but that's okay. That's easy to delete. That's interesting. It said it created it in alphabetical order, and it clearly didn't. But that doesn't matter. So yeah, has this actually created it in the right place? Source test. That's cool. Okay, so that actually works. It was probably slower than doing it manually, but yeah, it was less typing. So that kind of stuff is interesting, and it's impressive the way they've integrated it. And then it gives you the option to either accept all of this stuff or reject it, which is what I'll do now, because I don't actually want those files. So that's, I mean, mechanically, it's an impressive system that they've done here. The only problem is it's powered by LLMs, which are not good. They are not going to take over the world because they are really dumb and don't actually do anything that impressive. So anyway, what am I working on now? I am... Alright, let's look at... I'll just run the old version of Blockhead to try and explain what I'm working on now, because I think I've broken everything at the moment. There's been I've had a bunch of long-running problems which I've never solved, because every time I think about it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to work on that right now. I've been procrastinating on it for a long, long time. So it's basically... so you can see a problem here. You can drag these tracks around. When you drag this track around, when you grab this track and start dragging it, we need to make sure this track is being rendered in front of any other tracks on the workspace. First of all, which it is, but the blocks are in a world of their own. So if you ignore the blocks, everything is actually working correctly here, in that this sort of back panel is being brought forward in the scene hierarchy, and it's being rendered in front of everything else. So this track is in front at the moment, but if I start dragging another track, now this track is in front. And lanes work the same way. So if you drag a lane, it should appear in front of the other lanes. Trying to make it clear here. Like that. So the way that works at the moment is very hacky. And if you put blocks on all these lanes, then the entire thing falls apart, in that you can see the blocks start to sort of overlap each other, and they'll sort of show through the tracks. And then there's this whole other problem of when you drag, when I display these like borders, these thick borders around the selected blocks, for example, I'm doing that rendering on, I think, a per lane basis. So there's like a layer on each lane saying this is where you can draw borders and these like lo-fi visual elements if you need to. So that if, for example, I'm drawing like borders on all of these lanes, if I start dragging that one, well, I can't actually remember why I'm doing it on a per lane thing. There was a reason. I think it was so that the visual elements, again, are supposed to be drawn in front of the other visual elements, but even that doesn't really matter, really happen. And also, you can see it's just like really crap. Like the border on this block, when it's selected, that beeping noise in the background is my dishwasher finishing. It's not actually being drawn in front of... It should just always be drawn in front of everything else, really. But that's not the case. And then dragging this block to here should be in front of this panel. It should move it in front of this panel. In fact, any block that's being dragged should be drawn in front of all of the other interface elements, really. What about the workspace? I think there's problems with the workspace map as well, where if I drag it, yes, it's dragging behind the map, which is a bit awkward. The input panel, it does get dragged in front of the input panel, even though, like when you're not dragging something, if I just add some more tracks here, it should, yeah, these blocks appear behind the input panel, but then as soon as you start dragging it, I think, yeah, it moves in front of the input panel. So there's all these sort of rules, strange rules to deal with. So it's all broke. It's not very good at the moment. It's just stuff that I've been procrastinating on. So I've decided to try to fix it now. I'm taking a break from completing the refactor. The refactor is almost done now. I just need to test saving and loading project files because the format of project files had to change quite dramatically in order to support the history stuff, even though I'm not actually saving histories to file yet because that is very complicated. So history doesn't get saved to the project file. That is something that I can support in the future because technically that persistent data structures library that I'm using does support it, although it's experimental support. But then I have to write all of my serialization functions in a particular way or something like that. I haven't really looked into that. But anyway, I'm taking a break from all that to work on this instead. So I've created all of these. I'm sort of going to gut my scene hierarchy and rethink the entire thing. So everything that says dash layer is something that I just added like 30 minutes ago when I started doing this. And so workspace layer is going to contain all of the workspace elements other than tracks and lanes. Tracks are always going to go in track layer. Lane is always going to go in lane layer. The exception to that is if a track is being dragged, then that track gets moved into track dragging layer, and all of the lanes on that track get moved into the lane dragging layer. If an individual lane is being dragged, then everything stays where it is apart from the lane which gets moved into the lane dragging layer. The Bref lo-fi layer is where I'm going to be drawing the borders and all of those little visual elements. So that I can finally like draw it on top of everything else. If any block is being like dragged around or otherwise interacted with, it's going to be moved to here, and the lo-fi visual elements for specifically those blocks that are being dragged around will end up in here. And those two are in front of everything else. So that's going to be in front of the input panel, which is, I'm going to get rid of this awkward node and try and figure out where all of this stuff goes. Block container won't exist anymore. Lo-fi blocks is where I'm currently doing the lo-fi visual drawing. And then I'll figure out where all of this other stuff has to go in order for things to work correctly. I had a lot of problems in the past back when I first started using Godot and started working on this project of moving nodes around in the scene tree while you're interacting with them causes problems because Godot doesn't really anticipate that you're ever going to do that. If, like, for example, if you're interacting with buttons and things, and while the events are being handled for those input events, like when you're clicking on a button, if while that is being handled, you suddenly move the node to a different part of the scene tree, it will break all kinds of things. But I think that should all be not a problem anymore because of other changes that I've made to the way that I handle input events and the way that I position things. after learning a lot of lessons about how to use Godot over the years. I don't think any of those issues should be a problem anymore. But yeah, very early on, I decided, okay, I should try to minimize moving things around in the scene tree as much as possible because it just causes problems. But now I think I can get away with it because of the way that I'm doing certain things now. So yeah, these layers should actually, I think, go in front of Nerdbauer as well. So this is all part of main area, which is